James Schear is a global fellow with the Wilson Center's Africa program and the Environmental Change and Security program. He's a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense with the U.S. Department of Defense. He joins us to discuss a range of U.S. African security issues. Jim, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Delighted to be here.
So we're about a year out from when President Obama hosted the African Leaders Summit in August of 2014. One of the initiatives that came out of that, SGI, Security Governance Initiative. Could you tell us about that first for people who aren't familiar? Give us a brief description of what it's about, and then we can dig a little deeper.
The administration launched it about a year ago, and by the way, President Obama is about 2 weeks out from his trip to Africa, to Kenya, which will be a very significant event. The Security Governance Initiative was a low-vis, but I think high-impact, potentially high-impact proposal, which is a good match between America's interests and Africa's needs. It focuses on helping African partners build and strengthen to professionalize their security ministries, defense, interior, justice ministries, all the facets of government that focus on public security within the states and the countries of Africa. Not all of Africa. There are 6 initial countries that have signed up and where the U.S. is partnering with them. It focuses on coming up in each case with an agreed plan, which will have host nation support, but also a mix of U.S. expertise which they can bring to bear through either embedded advisory support or periodic engagement to focus on ministerial level support, especially in the areas of resource management, human resource management, and financial resource management.
And you mentioned 6 countries. Is there any idea that more countries could be recruited into the agreement?
The 6 were the initial tranche, if you will, the piloting the proposal with them. Nigeria, Kenya are the largest ones. Mali's are also in there, and several others. And in each case, a dedicated team led by the State Department is going in, but with a mix of expertise, not just diplomats, but
essentially a large technical assistance or consulting operation.
That is correct. Technical assistance is probably the right label to put on it. They're going in, they're working hard on what I would call the analytics. What's really needed? What can the country absorb? Because it's got to be them in the end. It's not about us.
So not a one-size-fits-all. You're talking about country-by-country assessment.
Right, right. Also, what's the long-range beneficial impact? You know, a quick fix here and there won't necessarily create opportunities for long-term development and professionalization of democratic and accountable structures. So that's important. The method of our engagement is still being developed. As I said before, we can have either advisors there full-time, permanently, or we can periodically engage. We also have to deal with the specific issue of corruption. You know, are our team experts there just to basically model good behavior, or are they whistleblowers? And if it's the latter, then how does that work? And
so we don't know until it plays out.
Still TBD. Now, in each case, in each of the 6 countries, the Obama administration has already scheduled or completed its initial engagement, its assessments, and it's developing agreed programs with each of these countries. This is a slow growth enterprise. There aren't going to be quick wins here. We have to look longer term to see what the deliverables will be. It's absolutely fair to ask the administration, what do we expect out of it and when? But
this is the classic long game.
It is the long game.
I've read some of your analysis of it, and one of the things that you talked about is that these are models built on self-reliance because there would be no plans for U.S. troops or any types of interventions of that nature.
Right. Yeah. This is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. I wanted your thought on that, and that why are you so certain about that? Is it just a matter of where the U.S. would choose to exert its resources in that regard, and it's just not on in the cards that it would be in any of these countries?
Yeah. I think we're at a stage in our own national security policy of looking to build partners. And we've become the indispensable partner, if you will, for a wide range of countries. But it's not a traditional partnership operationally that we saw in Iraq or Afghanistan over the past decade and a half. It's really, or ongoing in some cases, it's really more helping our partner build and sustain its own capability with us providing advice, training and advice and assistance where necessary with a small footprint.
Which ultimately sounds much more sustainable.
Absolutely more sustainable, and I think more appreciated, quite frankly. I think there are concerns in Africa about it, the perception of a heavy U.S. footprint. I think there have been times, for example, in disaster response where we had to have a lot of boots on the ground. In fact, we flowed several thousand into West Africa to help build Ebola treatment centers during the West African Ebola outbreak. But that was short and short-lived, and our troops went home, and the civilian leads, the various countries with their civilian responders took over.
Jim, with very little time remaining and with big issues to discuss, and I apologize in advance for giving such short time to some major issues, but I'd like to just ask you if I name a couple of scenarios where there are security concerns, if you to just give us the quick, brief overview of the current status, Boko Haram and the rise of that Islamic operation.
Yes, we're at a potential inflection point in Nigeria because there's a new president there who is Muslim, replacing his Christian predecessor. He has said that he will Buhari will push hard on Boko Haram. We'll see if he has political support for that. I think operationally the Nigerian military has been very challenged. They could do more directly, but I think the bigger issue is indirect. How do Nigerians create the reality that Northeast Nigerian populations are not perceived as second-class citizens, that they have growth and development opportunities beyond what they now have, which is the source of great grievance and I think radicalization.
Does the president's religion give him a certain advantage in dealing with this?
It's a little too early to say. I think he is pursuing that line of engagement, but we'll have to see.
The Libyan civil war.
Libyan civil war keeps on going. Operation Dignity, the nationalists, Operation Dawn, the Islamists continue to fight. Various efforts have been made to broker a peace settlement, and now we see that ISIS has come in and is showing a greater presence, potentially in the country for training, possibly for operations elsewhere, and that is a deep concern. I wish I had some good news there, but I don't.
Kenya and Somalia dispute, largely maritime dispute, but spilling over into other areas.
There is the perennial issue in that relationship is the Kenyan Somali community in northeast Kenya, and the challenges of cross-border movement and al-Shabaab high-profile attacks, as we saw in Nairobi last year, and more recently in the college toward the border with Somalia. That's a cause of great angst in both countries, but given all the important stakes that Kenya has in Somali stability, and we in the United States have a strong incentive to collaborate effectively with Kenya, that it's a great concern. I would say generally the track in Somalia is progressing in a positive way. It's slow. There are moments when we're concerned. There are still attacks going on. Al-Shabaab is still there, but it controls much less territory than it did before. Piracy on the maritime coast has gone way down because some of the seaports are now under control, Kismayu in particular. And while Somalia is definitely not out of the woods, it's in a much better place.
I should know enough to try to end on a positive note, but I have one final question, which is just about America's attention in general to the African continent and to some of these security issues. Does the level of activity and the importance of events, is it mirrored by U.S. attention, or are we still not quite as focused on Africa as we need to be?
I think we are focused on Africa in a positive, constructive way. Africa is a venue for, in many respects, great hope and great opportunity. There are parts of the continent, which is huge and diverse, by the way, 54 countries, over 1 billion people. Parts of the continent are actually growing economically and in terms of democratic governance, much better than it was a couple of decades ago. On the hardship side, there's still intrastate conflict. There are concerns about transnational terrorism and illicit trafficking, and migrants flowing north and refugees fleeing conflict. That's an issue for our European allies. Ebola outbreaks and sources of infectious disease we have to worry about. But I think we have, substantively, we have a good fix on those particular problems. Does that mean they're easy to solve? No. But I think if we can find a good formula for working with our African partners, and some of the efforts we've made in Somalia, I think, are positive in this regard on the peacekeeping side, and working effectively with both counterterrorism and building the security governance architecture, I think we can make progress.
Well, Jim, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure to dip into your deep well of information and insight.
Happy to offer my views. Thank you so much, John. Yeah.